Cincinnati's ready for the Big 12. It was time for them.
I am fired up.
It's a blessing to be able to be in this league with y'all, putting on for UC.
Cincinnati, a basketball school.
And there he goes. Touchdown! Bearcats!
Raquama again. Another slam inside.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GoBeercats podcast. I am your host, Brandon, of course, officially part of the Catskeller Social Club. We are continuing this journey across the Big 12. This is the 6th episode in this series. I have here for you Ace and Connor from the Aggieville Alleycats by way of Kansas State. The Wildcats are here. Gentlemen, welcome into the GoBeercats podcast. I'm glad to have you here this evening.
Thanks for the welcome. Welcome to the Big 12.
Absolutely, guys. We will get into a lot of things here this evening. We'll talk about football, basketball, of course, maybe some other sports that Kansas State excels in as well. We'll talk about some bigger Big 12 questions, and we will see if Bearcats fans here can't learn a thing or two about Manhattan, Kansas as well.
Awesome. There's quite a bit to learn. So
awesome, good stuff. I'm anxious to hear your guys' side of a couple of things, and we'll get into all of that. Before we jump into everything, though, this is the GoBeercats podcast. So we start things off with a beer on the show, gentlemen. This Time for a Beer segment is brought to you by the Delhi Liquor Store. They have everything that you need, whether it's a tailgate, a party, anything in between. Wine, cigars, bourbon, or just a beer on your way home, they got you covered. This beer actually does not come from the Delhi Liquor Store. It actually comes from Nick Kenny, who works there. He took a little vacation to Chicago and Milwaukee this past weekend, and he brought me back this Demon Haze Hazy IPA from Eagle Park Brewing in Milwaukee. So I've never had it before, and I will be enjoying this throughout the episode. What about, are you guys decided to sip on anything this Sunday evening, or what do you guys got going on?
I just got water.
I've got water. That's it.
Hey, hydrate or dihydrate.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, usually, the first thing I want to talk to you guys about here is I always look for schools that have partnerships with breweries, their own branded beer. Cincinnati just got theirs, Cincy Light, a couple weeks ago now. Delicious light lager that we plan on slamming a lot of before home games at Nipper or wherever it can be found, really. And when I was doing research for this episode, I found that the Kansas State offensive line coach had partnered with a local brewery there. What can you tell us about the beer Condor the Magnificent?
Connor, you've had it, so you're probably a bit more qualified here than I am.
I've never had the Condor.
Oh, really?
I've had the Tang Party, which is the
Tang Party. That is a phenomenal name. I love that. Tell us about Tang. I didn't know that there were two, so I'm already learning stuff here.
There are multiple.
Yeah, the Tang Party, as the name suggests, is fairly tangy. It's sweet. I'm not a beer aficionado by any stretch of the imagination, but I did find some at my local liquor store in Topeka, Kansas, and I went through those pretty quickly. It's very, very tasty. Really, really smooth and easy drink, but it still has a lot of flavor. It's very distinctive. And so I was really happy to give it a shot. I've not had the Condor yet, but I would love to try it at some point.
Yeah, K-State themselves also, outside of a Manhattan Brewing Company, which did the Tang Party and the Condor, a really great beer. I think they ship, if I'm remembering correctly. I think they ship. Don't quote me on that because I could be wrong and stupid. But the K-State itself also has an Ema vodka and the Wabash Reserve whiskey. I'm not going to comment on the quality of those liquors that exist.
It's a really nice mantelpiece.
It really is. Like if you're even an adjacent Cats fan or want to have a conversation piece, I suppose I should clarify Wildcats as opposed to Bearcats, but that's going to take a lot of getting used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good mantelpiece. It's a really pretty bottle.
Very cool. I mean, that's cool that they're branching out into several different options. We are not that far advanced here yet. We'll take what we can get, while we can get it, I guess. So as we stay hydrated or get boozed up here, if you're myself sitting in Cincinnati tonight, one thing I wanted to know, one thing I kind of like and I found challenging in a good way is finding the right guys to bring on to my podcast to learn about their respective teams. And when I saw your guys, the name of your podcast, the Aggieville Alleycats, which I think I just searched for it on Spotify, just Kansas State podcast, and it came up. Listened to a couple episodes and was like, okay, like I think these guys they have a pretty chill vibe. I think we could probably make something work on an episode here. So guys, just tell me how the podcast got started, how the Twitter account, and what's up with the names.
All right, I'll take the how it got started, and Connor can kind of take everything else. It's actually, there is no grand story about how Connor and I wanted to change the K-State podcasting landscape. Literally, it started 2 years ago at this point, 2 years and a month. Connor just texts me. He's like, hey, you want to do a K-State podcast? Because we just talk about K-State for several hours, no matter what. So may as well just put a microphone in front of us. He'd had experience doing podcasts before. I had experience with audio editing and video making because I used to make music and make videos for YouTube. So really, it just started from there because we noticed that the one thing that we really pride ourselves on, there are two really big things. First is we cover every sport that K-State has to offer. And yes, we're counting track and field, regardless of how poorly it went the first time. And secondly is a lot of pods for K-State have a lot of the fan perspective. Mm-hmm. We try to bring that perspective as well as do a little bit more in depth, like the X's and O's of things like football, because I'm a really big X's and O's guy. And we noticed that there aren't a lot of K-State pods that are like, okay, well, they're running mesh from a 2x1 set or something like that. And, we just noticed that a lot of people in the fan base wanted that. So we said, hey, why not us? Especially because we're just going to be talking about K-State sports anyway. Connor can explain the name inspiration as well, because this was our second or third choice for a name, wasn't it?
I seem to recall that was the only thing that we were really hung up on was the name. We just could not figure anything out. We had a good idea, but it turned out it was a name that already existed because we wanted to bring on the Podcats, but that already existed, of course.
And they haven't posted in 2 years.
Yeah, they hadn't posted in 2 years, but you never know when they'll start again. And so we had just kind of had to try and figure it out, and we saw a lot of different options that the other podcasts were doing. There's a College and Kimball podcast. Bosco's Boys is the big one. There's Threemont now, which didn't exist when we started. But we decided to really hit a specific district, I guess, with Aggieville, and then throw in something that ties in Aggieville and K-State with Alleycats. And just there's alleys in Aggieville, as many places do. But so that it's not a grand story, but I think it was Ace's idea initially. It was Aggieville Alleycats, and it kind of got to the point where there was truly no other option that sounded as good as it whatsoever. And it's stuck around, and it's been a great name for us.
Yep.
Now, did both of you guys go to Kansas State?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just graduated this last year. Connor graduated 2 years ago because he's a year older than me. So.
All right, very nice, very nice. So, good stuff there. I think I want to jump right into football season on this podcast. We kind of switch it up. We switched it up a couple of times what order we do things, but K-State is coming off of a pretty successful season, beating TCU in the Big 12 championship this year. Before we get into the sort of performance side of things, give me an outlook, some highlights of what the campus, the stadium. What does game day look like on for a home game for Kansas State?
a lot of tailgating, like as with everywhere. But as much as it pains me to say, even though Big Game Boomer has turned into a closeted K-State fan recently, a lot of people don't know that. But the tailgating environment at Bill Snyder Family Stadium, which is the name of the stadium, it's really special because I've been to a few different college games, do different college environments. K-State's tailgating environment is by far the best that I've ever been to, because it's like you condense everything that people think is good about like Southern hospitality, put it in central northern Kansas. Like, you just get invited. Like, you'll be walking to the gates, you'll get asked by 4 or 5 different people. It's like, hey, come on over to the tailgate. I have no idea who these people are, but they'll just invite you over. You get all kinds of different barbecue, most of it Kansas City style, the objectively correct style. And, really good beer, a lot of it from Manhattan Brewing Company. And the stadium environment is, well, I'll actually let Connor cover that because I don't want to completely drown out the brains of the podcast here.
I wouldn't call myself the brains, but it's the stadium's changed a lot. I've been a K-State fan for my entire life, and the stadium looked completely different than it did at this time 10 years ago. Specifically, we have a brand new press box on the west side that has a castle-looking exterior, brand new football offices on the north side, and then they just finished a premium seating project on the south side. And so it looks completely different both on the interior and exterior. And they just finished a new practice facility on the east side as well. And it looks completely different. Like, if you've ever played at K-State, like in NCAA 14, it doesn't look anything like that anymore. And it hasn't looked like that since that game came out, really. But it's completely different. It really traps sound in pretty well. It's a very passionate fan base inside. Students are on their feet for the entire game, as are many other sections surrounding the student section. It's very, very loud for 50,000 people. I think sometimes people look at the capacity and don't expect much because, there's so many places that have like 80, 90, 100. But it's very, very loud for 50. And it's very prideful, sometimes angry. Especially for basketball. I know
it's always angry, man.
Yeah, I know back in the around 2010, 2012 era, when Bramlage Coliseum was kind of at its peak as a basketball venue, K-State was kind of coined as like the angriest fan base in the country, and that kind of went away for a while. But with the Tang hire, the fan base has been reinvigorated, although maybe not as angry as it once was. Maybe just more passionate and kind of directing that more positively. But it's an awesome fan base, a really passionate fan base. I know K-State, in terms of like graduates, has one of the best alumni association memberships in the country, if not the best, in terms of ratio of association members to graduates. But K-State fans love K-State and Manhattan. K-State's everywhere in Manhattan.
So give me the tailgating scene you guys matched. You said it was one of the best, which is funny, and I'll tell you why here in just a moment. But I've tailgated in some pretty interesting locations. Last week we had the guys from Between Two Bears on. They were telling me about sailgating at their stadium, which sounds amazing. Can't even give them props for that. It sounds awesome. I've tailgated on a golf course before. At UC here, it is on a commons that they right on campus that they changed the name of for tailgating, called the Grid. So where are you guys tailgating in parking lots right outside of the stadium? What's the landscape look like there?
It's mostly parking lots. Sorry, Connor. It's mostly parking lots right outside the stadium. And if you're looking for the unique parts of K-State tailgating, you have the east and west lots of the stadium itself. I think in the west lot, there's almost always a bus. And then there is, if you go across the street from where the stadium is, across that street that no one knows what I'm talking about, that's Kimball, right, Connor?
Yeah, that's Kimball.
there is oftentimes a tailgate tractor, which is a tractor that has been modified to have grills, power, and beer in it.
Nice.
And if you ever come down to K-State, I always recommend the tailgate tractor, because I know that there are some people, especially our state mates, I will call them, down south and to the east, who treat the tailgate tractor as an embracing of a stereotype. However, they do not have a tailgate tractor nor working bathrooms in their stadium. So I simply do not care about their opinions on this matter. So yeah, there's a lot of unique elements, because obviously tailgate tractor, you have the bus, but it's more what each individual person is doing. Because if you look at individual tailgates, they're like a dime a dozen. Most people kind of do the same thing. It's almost like an aisle by aisle thing at K-State. You'll have brats one place, you have ribs another place, you'll have some guy making pulled pork in a smoker, which I have no idea how he's kept a smoker on for this entire time. But yeah, it's unique just because of the variety of options. It's almost like someone put like a really fancy student union in the parking lot.
Well, I want to ask you guys about a little bit more of a football question. I want to ask you guys about Farmageddon. I had Levi on from Wide Right and Natty Light a couple weeks ago, and he gave Bearcats fans his rendition of what Farmageddon is and why the rivalry works between Kansas State and Iowa State. He proclaimed that Iowa State had the best tailgating scene in America, not just the Big 12. I do believe. So give us your side of things. What is your take on Farmageddon and that rivalry with Iowa State?
Well, Farmageddon, as I understand, was something that started on a K-State forum probably about 15 years ago. It's called a Go EMA, as a free fan forum, and definitely an interesting place. But they somebody over there, I think, coined the term Farmageddon. It's not an officially recognized term for the rivalry, but both fan bases completely acknowledge it, and it's been referred to as that a few times on broadcast for the game. So at this point, it's all but official, but there's not a trophy for it or anything like that. Although there are many people who think that there should be and have various ideas on what it should be, although it all comes back to being agricultural themed. And that's why the rivalry works so well, is because it's two land grant schools that are historically some of the oldest land grant schools. And they have so much in common on that ground, both being ag schools, both being from air quotes flyover states, and both being programs that kind of have a chip on their shoulder perpetually, just because many other programs that are in the Southeast or on the East Coast or on the West Coast probably don't think about them too much, but they still have plenty of talent. Not so much Iowa State, but K-State certainly does. But yeah, I mean, very similar fan bases that do very similar things and feel very similar ways about their programs respectively. And I think that's why the rivalry works so well, is because we're very similar to them. It's not so much a difference thing. It's we are very similar schools at the end of the day. And I think that there's probably buried beneath the hatred, probably some level of admiration, just because we do have some level of kindred spirit with them. But at the end of the day, they're a fun school to hate. I mean, it's easy to hate a school that's never had 10 wins in a season. So,
and for also another fun fact is, it is the K-State Iowa State series, if I'm remembering correctly, is either the second or third longest consecutively running series in college football, only behind, I think, Georgia and Georgia State.
Probably Tech.
It was probably Tech, but it's up there. Plus, it as much as K-State fans kind of put a target on themselves, because there are a large number of the fan base who kind of instigates Twitter wars or blows them up a little bit.
They also fall for bait a lot.
They also fall for bait a lot. But Iowa State also kind of makes it easy because, no 10-win season. That's not the fan base's fault. What is the fan base's fault is an admiration over a bridge.
Yeah, that's true. The bridge thing was really weird.
We still talk about it.
Enlighten us. What is it? What is this bridge situation?
Oh my God. Okay, so Iowa State, I believe it was finished this last season. They built a pedestrian bridge from Jack Trice Stadium to a street across. And for no reason, like 2 or 3 weeks after it was made, Iowa State fans were talking about it like they had just discovered like the secret to unlimited like power, like clean electricity. And it was just a pedestrian bridge. And it was it was just really, didn't Iowa State make a graphic about it, Connor, or am I misremembering that?
I think you're onto something there. I can't remember specifically what it is, but I think they made it into a graphic at some point or put it in like a recruiting graphic or something crazy like that. But yeah, I mean, it's just a bridge. It's not a bad bridge. It's just a fine bridge.
It's a perfectly serviceable
like, I'm not
bridge.
going to sit here and say it's structurally unsound or something. I'm sure it's fine, but
it's a perfectly fine bridge. It's just weird to obsess over a pedestrian bridge.
Yeah.
I think I get that. I think I saw some video that somebody put together on Twitter, calling out like Iowa State Big 12 championship deniers, or I don't know if that was you guys or where I saw that, but I think they featured them bragging about the bridge in that video as well. And so when you said that kind of triggered my memory there. Now, like Iowa State, you guys have a unique situation in that you have an in-state rival as well. So kind of compare the Farmageddon rivalry with that of Kansas.
That's a fun one. I think you and I can go back and forth on this, Ace. It's much different than the Iowa State rivalry. Whereas the Iowa State rivalry is one between two fan bases that think, feel, and act very similarly. The K-State KU one is just so strange compared to that. There's obviously a rivalry present, but if you talk to the average KU fan, they kind of like to pretend there isn't one. And I've never been able to put my finger on why that is, but that is pretty consistent amongst KU fans. I think some of it has to do with a superiority complex. I think that they have to picture themselves as better than K-State fans. They definitely look down their nose at K-State fans for going to an ag school, an engineering school. You know, they see themselves, I guess, as more proper because they have a law school, they have a med school, and stuff like that. Those aren't bad things to have. In fact, those are very important things to have. But it's also very important to have ag schools and engineering schools. But the rivalry's also been really strange because the last 30-ish years, KU has pretty well dominated basketball. But in that same time frame, K-State's dominated football. So, you get, during football season, the just wait till basketball season from KU fans. And, they don't care until they win, basically, with football. Ace, you want to add to this?
Yeah, I can kind of add to because I grew up an MU fan. I'm a combination K-State MU fan. So I hate KU probably a little bit more than the average K-State fan. And a lot of it, of the big excuse you hear from KU fans is, oh, our real rival is MU. You can have more than one rival is my biggest response to that. Because like you have schools that hate just about everybody that's nearby them. But I think the big thing about it is KU, especially some of their fans, there's some really nice KU fans. Like it's just that the really annoying ones are really, really loud.
Okay.
There are a lot of really normal KU fans who acknowledge the rivalry. It's just the ones that are really annoying are the loudest ones and also bring up like all-time record and everything. Like, because the all-time series in K-State KU for football is 65-50 with 5 ties in favor of KU. Yeah. Most of those victories came before people knew what a forward pass was. So I like the leather helmet victories. You can't really count those. Yeah. Basketball, yeah, fully admit. All right, that one you have a point. They outright lie about the baseball series. They've deleted like 15 games from their record against K-State that they lost. So they claim to be leading the all-time series in baseball. So it's just weird. It's a really weird rivalry because it's not the traditional like, oh, these guys are like our in-state rivals. We just don't like them because they're in-state. It's this really weird, like everyone's calling each other little and big brother. Like I don't get it really, even from someone who's been immersed in sort of the big trifecta rivalry of K-State, MU, and KU. But it's a strange rivalry because you get K-State, who kind of factions themselves as the everyman university because they're a land grant. Then you have KU fans, like I said, the really annoying ones who look down upon land grant status.
I mean, you can really find some of those KU fans, some of the particularly interesting ones, truly think that, it's like Harvard of the Plains or something like that in Lawrence. And it's like, brother, you have the same admission standards we do. Like,
yes, the exact same admission standards.
Very nice. That's always an interesting dynamic for schools that share a state with with another, and that other school is willing to play you every year and be in the same conference. We don't have that here, so I always like to get that point of view. And when I say we don't have that here, I mean that Ohio State does. I mean when they say we'll play you like once every 8 years, like we have to go to Columbus. I think the last time they played in Nippert Stadium was 2002. Maybe. I think that's 2002. Yeah.
Cowards.
Whatever. Yeah. I'm over it. Let me ask you guys about this coming football season. I know you guys, one of my favorite players in college football last year was Deuce Vaughn. I thought he was electric, very exciting player. And if I'm not mistaken, he went to the Cowboys. Was he drafted by the Cowboys? Drafted by the Cowboys last year. Interesting. I did not know that. So what's the outlook? You guys went 10-4 last year. Big 12 championship, beat TCU, who would go on to play for the national championship. What's the what sort of outlook you guys got going into this year?
Connor, do you wanna go first for this?
Yeah, I'll go. K-State fans, I think, do have high expectations this year because you lose Deuce Vaughn. There's no way to replace Deuce Vaughn solo because he was a special player. And he was unique in a lot of ways. But I do think K-State can fill the void left with multiple people. DJ Giddens was very, very encouraging as a backup last year, spellback for Deuce Vaughn. He specifically looked really good in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama. And he also was a pretty good closer in games when Deuce's legs were tired. He'd come in for like the last drive sometimes and kind of finish it out. And he had a few games where he really did look great. We brought in a running back as well, Trayshawn Ward. He's a transfer from Florida State. And I think we're all very excited about him. He has potential to be a really good receiving back. And he's a smaller guy. Still, he's not as small as Deuce Vaughn, few are. But he will likely fill that void as kind of more of a elusive back that's going to go out there and make people miss. And then we have freshman Joe Jackson coming in, who will probably see some snaps here and there that should be really good. But people have really high expectations for K-State this year, at least on the interior in K-State's fan base. Will Howard's back, and he was excellent last year. We've always been big fans of Will Howard over at the Alleycats. Keegan Johnson's in from Iowa at receiver. We bring our tight end back, our entire offensive line back. Multiple defensive linemen are back. I think our entire linebacker room is back as well. And then I think at least 2 defensive backs. I had Kobe Savage is back.
Jacob
Parrish is back. Payne is back. Yeah,
Keenan Garber, the surprise story of last year, is back.
Yeah, it was weird. But there's a ton of optimism on the K-State side of things right now.
Yeah. So I'm looking at you. Oh, I'm sorry, Ace. You have something as well?
No. He basically just he said what I was going to say is I think the biggest thing is returning the entire offensive line, including the exceedingly rare projected first-round pick at interior offensive lineman in Cooper Beebe, who I think he stayed back he could have gone out this last year to the draft. He decided to stay one more season because his brother is just got on campus. He was a recruit, also an interior offensive lineman.
Nice. Very cool. So as I'm looking at your guys' schedule here for this upcoming season, what's the I mean, if you guys said that the fan base is going to really get out, show out for this one home game this year, looking at the schedule, what do you think that game is this year?
I really think that probably like at the end of last year, even towards pretty much all of last year, even after the disappointing Tulane loss, before we figured out Tulane was actually really good. There's a famous not a famous joke. We're not famous people, but there's a joke in the sort of Alleycat community about my opinion of Tulane at the time we were playing them. But I if I had to pick one game in particular that I think would be the most raucous, it would probably be that game up against TCU, largely because I feel like that's going to be, obviously it's a rematch of the Big 12 championship and also the game down in Fort Worth, which had some shaboingery occurring down there. But it was, there's sort of been a weird rivalry forming between K-State and TCU, especially recently, which I never thought that I would see from our purple brethren, but it's really spawned just recently. So if I had to pick, I think pretty much every home game will probably be sold out, because I know the first game was down to standing room only like a month ago. And that was just from like season ticket sales. But the TCU game will probably be the most raucous environment, followed closely by Iowa State. Everything else might be a sort of push, I would say. Connor,
Houston might be a big one just because it's homecoming. But that's about it. But I mean, we're on pace to sell out the opening game. I think TCU is pretty close. And last year we sold out every single game. I imagine that's probably going to happen again this year. At least it wouldn't be shocking if it happened. Then the Mizzou game on the road will be big. The KU game on the road will be big. There are a lot of big games. Some of our biggest games are on the road this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be interesting.
At Texas Tech, at Texas, at Kansas, at Missouri. Yeah, so plenty of big away games for you guys this year.
Yeah, that there is. KU on the road will definitely be interesting. We'll see the crowd makeup, because the last few times that I've gone, it's probably been about 1/3 to half K-State fans over at KU. It'll probably be more KU this year because since there's a lot of excitement around the program. But Texas and Tech on the road, that's going to be rough. I think those are going to be two really, really good teams this year.
Yeah. Very nice. So let's move into the winter sport of basketball here. Again, I mean, you guys had a hell of a year this year. 26-10 overall. I mean, Coach Tang was very. I mean, what he did this year, and then it looks like sort of set to do it again. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, an Elite Eight run, right? You guys lost to, was it?
FAU.
It was one of the FAU. That's what I thought. Florida Atlantic, yeah. Which is wild in and of itself. But tell us about the run you guys made this past year, and how fun that must have been. The success of football and basketball in the same season like that.
It was crazy. There's no other way to put it than it was crazy. There was genuine talks in the fan base. Granted, some of the more excitable people in the fan base that. Here's where we got to get it out of the way, because a commenter will say it sometime, otherwise, or someone on Twitter will say it. K-State has not won a team national title like in their history. They're one of like 2 Power Fives to not do that. That's not as big a dig as many people think it is. A lot of us do not care, but that was sort of, there were people on Twitter, especially like even more reasonable people outside of the more rabid any year can be the year people. They were thinking that was going to be the team that was going to do it in Tang's first year. And a lot of that has to do with 2 very special players in Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson. Keese's tournament run was every single game in the tournament was an over my dead body game for Marquise Noel. He just declined to lose against Michigan State, and then got called the little guy after the game. It's like he's quote unquote 5'8". There's quotations for a reason, but he had one of the most legendary tournament runs that the tournament's ever seen from, a true distributing guard. And then, of course, Keontae Johnson, who was the story of college basketball this last year, coming from Florida 2 years before he came to K-State, he collapsed on the court due to an oversized heart and, barely getting clearance to come back. And a lot of teams weren't willing to take a chance on him. K-State does, and he becomes one of the best players in the country and becomes a second-round draft pick in the NBA. And, just watching those two alone would have made the season worth it, but just the confidence that the team exuded from before in the previous era under Bruce Weber, that confidence wasn't really there. There's a sort of swagger that Tang has brought to K-State basketball, and I think that's why the fan base has embraced him so much.
Yeah, it's been renewed confidence, renewed belief, I think is what it was as well. It was not just that K-State was winning, because there were great seasons under Bruce Weber where K-State was winning. The difference was not just winning, but we were winning in an entertaining way. Like tons of dunks, tons of lob plays, lots of fantastic games, great athletes everywhere. I mean, the athleticism for the whole team was clearly much higher than it had been in the past few seasons for K-State. And yeah, I mean, it definitely, once we won that Sweet 16 game, it kind of felt like it might be the year to do it, because if you looked ahead, it was going to be probably as about a favorable a run as you could possibly get or ever expect to get in the NCAA tournament, because you had 9 seed FAU, would have been 5 seed San Diego State, and then 5 seed in UConn, which would have been at least in some way a favorable path. But also, FAU was a really good team. They lost on a buzzer beater in the Final Four. UConn, obviously a great team that has figured it out at the right time. So there's not a guarantee that K-State would have won that national title. But I think the big thing is that now K-State fans believe that if someone's going to win it, it's going to be Jerome Tang. And he has the capabilities of doing it both as a coach and as a recruiter, and also as just a guy to put more energy into the fan base, because he was at football games in the fall, getting students hyped up, bringing recruits onto the sideline, and just getting people generally excited before the season started. And he went all in on the fan base, and it worked, because after the first of the year, K-State sold out most of its home games, I think, except for like a couple weekday games, and sold out every weekend game. And clearly there's massive fan base buy-in. Season ticket sales are way, 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 way up from last year. And it's going to be a very, very exciting season that doesn't have 2 All-Americans on it, because, I mean, you can't ever go into a season expecting to have 2 All-Americans. But it's going to be top to bottom, a really deep roster this year with a lot of talent.
So right now, which season are you looking forward to more, football or basketball?
Oh, that's dirty. That is a dirty question. Wow. There's really good arguments for both. I will say that football narrowly edges out basketball. And the only reason I can say that is because I'm insanely biased towards football, because it's my favorite sport. Like, the fact that it's even close should show how excited people are about K-State basketball.
Yeah, because you said football, I'll say basketball. And I'm so excited to see Naquan Tomlin come back, Arthur Kaluma transfer from Creighton. He's on pace to have a great season and be an NBA guy here pretty soon. Same with Tomlin. Tyler Perry from North Texas. He was averaging like 18 a game last year.
With the slowest paced offense.
And then like the slowest offense in the country. So we're super excited to have him. A trio of 4-star freshmen that hopefully should step up. I'm really excited about Caleb Rich, because he's pretty much just like Diet Zion, but like healthy. And then there's going to be a lot of other guys to be excited about as well, and a lot of talent on the team. So I'm just differentiating that from football so we can each get a little spiel in. But yeah, I'm super excited for football as well because I also grew up going to K-State games. So there's a big nostalgia factor for me in K-State football games. Every time it like transports me back to like 2012 when K-State had that incredible run and won the Big 12.
Very nice. Ace, to answer my own question, just so I don't, throw you off there, I would probably say for Bearcats fans, for me, it's basketball because it feels like football has had the momentum for since the second year after Fickle took over. But now it seems like that pendulum is swinging over to basketball with some things that Wes Miller is doing and some of the transfers that he's brought in as well. So I'm a little bit more excited for basketball than football. I think we'll survive basketball season or football season just fine. But the Bearcats have a little more loftier expectations when it comes to basketball this season. And that just happens to be as we move into the best, hardest, most gruesome basketball conference in America. So we'll see how that turns out for us. But, I think for me, it's basketball season right now. For Kansas State, give us, we talked football, we talked basketball. Is there a third sport that Kansas State excels in or the fans kind of, get excited about?
There's probably 3 legitimate options. I think this year, best bet's women's basketball. Ayoka Lee is back, former All-American that missed last year due to injury. Gabby Gregory is back. She was a leading scorer last year. I think all of our leading scorers are back, like our top 4 from last season. Ayoka Lee will be back as well. 1 through 5, probably 1 through 6 or 7, K-State women's basketball is going to be immensely talented. But then there's also excitement around volleyball. They just opened a brand new $40 million volleyball arena, and that's going to be christened like at the beginning of football season. And it'll be the first ever like 100% dedicated volleyball facility for K-State volleyball, and new coach as well. So there's a lot of excitement around there. And baseball, there's a great deal of excitement around there. K-State was like the first team out of the men's College World Series bracket.
I'm still mad about it. I'm still mad about it.
I understand. We definitely got screwed over. But
Oklahoma got in and we swept them.
Tech got in over us and we took 2 of 3 from them. It was a nightmare. But there's a lot of excitement there. The team has a chip on their shoulder, and we've got a really nice baseball stadium. It's not the biggest, but it is really nice. So there's probably 3 right there that I think that you could look forward to. But if I had to pick one, it'd be women's basketball.
Yeah, I'd pick women's basketball too, just because if I've gone on record on our show multiple times that if it was just purely based off of talent, there's absolutely zero reason why this K-State team shouldn't make a run towards the national title, only to get decimated by LSU and Kim Mulkey, because that's just a machine. But like the talent on that roster is, the stereotype for women's basketball is it tends to be a little slower. No, no, because you have the most dominant player, or one of the most dominant players, regardless of sport, in Ayoka Lee, who just 2 years ago broke the NCAA single game scoring record in regulation with no threes.
Yep,
and
61.
then you had 61 points in one regulation game. Gabby Gregory, who's an outside shooting threat. Jalen Glenn, who led the Big 12 in steals last year and somehow didn't make the All-Big 12 defensive team. And then you have Serena Sundell, one of the best distributors in K-State women's basketball history, and Eliza Maupin, who Connor and I have called her the female Naquan Tomlin, because Naquan Tomlin is just a better athlete than everyone on the court combined. And that's just Eliza Maupin. But that's my phone.
Very nice. So let me ask you about the 4 new incoming schools here. What was the Kansas State fans' reactions to the 4 schools? Because it seems like some standing Big 12 schools were either indifferent, not excited, or were like, hey, maybe this stabilizes things. So it seemed like there was a range of emotions there. What were the Wildcats fans' responses to the 4 incoming schools?
At first, I would say relief. Like when it was first announced, especially for K-State fans, probably Iowa State fans and Oklahoma State fans, maybe. Then TCU and Baylor as well, probably relief because it was a stabilizing factor. And then once we were able to, not have the death of the Big 12 in our rearview mirror, like coming up on us, we were able to really sit down, digest it. And I think most K-State fans are pretty pleased with the ads that we made because I think at that specific point in time, I think Cincinnati, BYU, Houston, and UCF were probably the 4 best ads that could have been made. I think we would have been happy with BYU regardless. I think Cincinnati falls into that category as well. And then maybe Houston. I think Big 12 fans are still a little skeptical about UCF, even K-State fans, mainly because of like geographic reasons and they're kind of out on an island. But they're also possibly a sleeping giant. People are pretty convinced that they could end up really exploding and with Power 5 funding and becoming a great program. But, that's all in the future. But Cincinnati was a big ad. BYU is huge, literally, because they're all over the country. And then Houston was also a big ad that delivers another Texas market. And although markets are kind of getting less and less important, I guess, in the grand scheme of realignment. But I think K-State fans in general are happy with at least 3 of the 4. And I think most casual K-State fans are good with it. But I think in everyone's heart of hearts, they just want to go back to like the Big 8. Like, because I think that's what everybody wants really at the end of the day is to like have security with a regional conference of peers that like it's just like a historic conference. I think that's ultimately what everyone wants in realignment. We'll never see that, but I think that's what everybody truly, truly wants, but it's also not realistic. So I think given that situation, I think people are happy with it.
Yeah, and I will say that just me personally, and this isn't just because I'm on a Cincinnati podcast, I promise, but Cincy was probably my favorite of all the ads, even with Fickle eventually going to Wisconsin. Cincy was always like my favorite of the ads just because I've always been like a sort of casual, okay, what's Cincinnati doing? Like not enough to call myself a fan. But if I had to pick one team from the American, like, some people pick one team per conference, Cincinnati would have been my American team. But I would say that I was really happy with the Cincinnati ad for competitiveness reasons in football, as well as adding another Ohio market, sort of give West Virginia not being on an island. I was all right with the UCF ad. I wouldn't say I was excited with it. Houston and BYU, to me, were both kind of take it or leave it. Like, I understand why they were brought in, but I was just sort of – I was happy with the ads of UCF and Cincinnati, mostly because I focus on football. If I focused on basketball, I think Houston would be the most exciting ad to me than Cincinnati. But, yeah, I was happy with all 4 of the ads.
Very nice. So what about when the Big 12 expands again? Who would you like to see be the first team or two that they add the next time around?
Not Gonzaga.
No. Same.
Yeah, if I had to pick 2, if I didn't know this wasn't going to happen already, I would say Memphis and then just pick someone else. Yormark apparently has no interest in Memphis whatsoever, which is sort of heartbreaking to me, but fine. If I had to pick 2, regardless of conference, that I can just drag kicking and screaming, I would probably pick Colorado and Arizona State. Pick one. I don't care. I've been to Tempe. Their stadium is built into a mountain, so that's really cool. But Colorado, I feel like, is sort of a realistic shot of getting dragged back in to the conference. I don't think it'll happen as quickly as people say it will, because I don't think the Pac-12 is going to die like tomorrow or this month. I think it'll probably be another 2 or 3 years. Like USC, UCLA will peace out. I think San Diego State not joining after telling the Mountain West that they were going to peace out and then saying, guys, I'm really sorry, let me back in. I think that's really telling of both San Diego State, but I think it's even more damning to the Pac-12. But Yeah, if I had to pick 2, Colorado's 1, Arizona State, pick one of the 2. Utah was on that list, but Utah is sort of on K-State fans' list for several reasons.
Yeah. It also depends, I guess, on when expansion happens, because it's definitely going to. But if we go far enough down the road, there's a pretty solid chance that the ACC becomes available. In a perfect world, I would love to add Virginia Tech and Pitt to kind of bring in those West Virginia rivals to really give West Virginia like a solid foothold. And those would also be fairly regional ads for Cincinnati as well.
Yeah.
So I think kind of getting out there, adding some intriguing rivalries, and that, like, having the backyard brawl, getting to watch that once a year would just be such a treat, because I mean, it was gone for way too long. Virginia Tech is kind of a school that both Ace and I like. We both want to get to Virginia Tech at some point to watch a game. So I think hitting up a few ACC schools at some point, way down the road, whenever they figure out how to get out of that horrible grant of rights they signed, that would be pretty nice. But in the interim, I also like the idea of Colorado and Arizona, and just kind of throwing out some Hail Marys, I guess, at a few others. But you don't want to overexpand, I guess.
For sure. Very good. Very nice. So if you thinking about like the 2 big sports, football, basketball, if you were thinking, one of the 4 new schools were going to be more successful in football or basketball, which season would you think one of the 4 schools would have more success in?
If I had to go in order by school, I'd say Cincinnati does better in basketball. UCF does better in football. Houston does better in basketball. Oh, good Lord, BYU. Football by default. If I had to pick one that was probably going to have the best season out of all of them, I think Houston's style of play adjusts best to the Big 12 for basketball.
Yeah.
So like they're going to have the best basketball season, but probably almost certainly will have the worst football season.
Yeah, they're among the new schools. They'll be that. They'll probably find a way to surpass West Virginia, because
that's not hard.
Yeah, West Virginia's in for a really, really rough season across the
in
board.
both
I think.
sports.
Yeah, they're pretty well screwed right now.
Yeah, who knows?
But yeah, I like what you had there, Ace. Cincinnati for basketball. Although again, succeeding in the basketball side of the Big 12, it's going to be so hard for anybody to do that, because again, it's just going to be, every school, it's going to be death by 1,000 cuts, because there is not a single night off for any of those schools. I mean, K-State was a 3 seed and we lost like 6 or 7 games in conference play, and because it's not easy at all. Every single school is fairly talented, and it makes teams that have a lot of talent, like last year Oklahoma State, it makes them look a lot worse than they really are, when they probably would have easily made the NCAA tournament in the Pac-12 or something like that. But Houston and Cincy should take a big step up in basketball. UCF, I'll be watching in football, although I'm not sold on them being incredible, but they're definitely be better at football than basketball, I think, this year. And BYU, I think you take football there as well. Jimmerford, that's not walking through the door.
Yeah. I think the Central Florida basketball season will kind of be like, oh, we have an off night. We have the nights. Like this will, like we'll catch our breath as we cruise. We'll have a B+ game, B- game even, and we'll be all right tonight. Which might be a nice change of pace for some of the Big 12 teams. Not having a team where you can be like, all right, this is good because we have this year Texas in 2 days, and on the road at Texas Tech the next, and whatever the seventh circle of hell that is Big 12 basketball. So
you're gonna learn the Allen Fieldhouse tax. I'm sorry.
Oh, I've heard. We've heard about it. Yeah, for sure. That is something that we'll definitely keep an eye on as we move into basketball season. Gentlemen, I really only have one question here left, sort of a gambling question. Don't know if you guys are big into sports betting or not. And I think I know exactly how you're going to answer this question. I'm going to answer it ask you regardless. And of course, this gambling question, it is brought to you by the BetStamp app. One of our sponsors for the new sponsors for the show this season. The BetStamp app allows you to line shop. So if you're trying to see which sportsbook has the best odds, BetStamp can do that for you, as well as track all of your bets in one location. So when you download the BetStamp app, be sure to use the referral code GoBeercats. Now, gentlemen, if I gave you Texas and TCU or the field to win the Big 12 in football this year, who are you taking?
If it were to make the game, as my webcam decides that it's time to go insane, let's just real quick. If it were just to make the Big 12 championship, I would say I would take half that. Texas is by far the most talented roster in the Big 12 and a top 5 talented roster in the country. It's just reliant on them not Texasing themselves. I, however, do not believe that they are capable of not Texasing themselves. So in this case, I will actually take the field.
Yeah, Texas is still, after watching them for the last 15 years, they're kind of still in a guilty until proven innocent on actually being able to properly utilize their talent. So I think I kind of have to take the field, although the stars are aligning for this to be a really good Texas season, but they still have to follow through and actually do it. And they've not shown that they're able to do that in the past.
Definitely. That's exactly what I thought you guys would say after, the season that Kansas State had. When I was, coming up with the question, I was going to say Texas and Kansas State, but I thought that kind of made it a little too unfair. I thought too many people would lean that way. So, very nice. It's exactly what I expected from you, gentlemen. Guys, you guys have been great. The podcast is the Aggieville Alleycats. You guys that's the handle on Twitter as well, if I'm not mistaken. So Bearcats fans, give them a follow. I try to follow at least one, if not two, fan accounts from each Big 12 school, and definitely good stuff coming from you guys. Anything else you guys want to plug or mention before we hop off here this evening?
No, it's the personal accounts are at AC Edwards 00 for me.
I'm at Connor Baltazar, capital C, capital B.
And it's Aggieville Alleycats. It's because Alleycats was far too long, I fear.
Gotcha. There it is. All right. Very nice. Gentlemen, I certainly appreciate this. If you guys find yourselves in Cincinnati for a basketball game this year or anything in the future, certainly reach out and we'll make sure you guys have a good time, and I'll see you in the upcoming season.
Thanks so much.
See you then.